I had a source of inspiration when I was younger. The wanderer above the sea of fog crafted in 1817 were my deepest emotions brought to life. Close to 2 centuries later, transported to completely different culture, my context in India. But when I think back, I ask myself, why did I resonate with the artwork so much? Because it unlocked what I was feeling at the time. As a teenager, life seemed insurmountable because of some serious troubles, much like the mountains that you see in the painting, and I wanted to push through. Also, I had chosen an unconventional career path from my family of doctors, engineers, and MBAs. The path was hardly set. As the only journalist in at least 2 generations, my choices were mine and mine alone, and so were my mistakes. In case you haven't guessed, I come from a Desi family where stability, especially of the well-to-do financial kinds, is valued. One wrong move, or so it seemed, would land me at the bottom of the valley atop the pile of bad life decisions. So you see, by not following familiar life goals, I had taken on a huge responsibility. As I sat contemplating for days on end on which university to attend or internship to take up, I felt increasingly melancholic and uncertain. My life had to be meaningful. It had to make a difference. This was because I was idealistic about the change I wanted to bring to the world. I graduated during the economic crisis of 2009. Jobs weren't exactly available at the time, particularly the offbeat ones such as journalism. When I did get one later, I started working with as much enthusiasm as I had in me, and then another thing happened. I carried my resignation letter in my backpack for close to 2 years because it wasn't what I had imagined even as I was learning. My adversity at this moment is feeling gutted by my choice. I felt powerless. I asked myself, was I so wrong? My lesson in this phase is what I still carry. In each stage of life, I would have to make critical, life-shaping decisions, hoping for the best and without being able to peer into the future. This also meant that I had to let go of any notion that I can control the outcomes of my decisions, much like the job I mentioned. And so, while doubting myself, I made the decision to stick to the spark I felt in me. The practical choice of changing my industry of work came later on. I found part of the answer why my gut helped me take the plunge in an encounter while working in a remote village in Manipur. There, I met so many people trying to build their lives from what I thought was almost nothing. One such was an elderly gentleman who had opened a residential school for orphans. Some of these children had traveled from across the border, from Myanmar. Most of the children had HIV and other serious medical complications. They needed treatment. I still remember their small library room, made up of donated books and, as it seemed to me, dreams of a better future. But what he told me remains etched in my memory and will remain so forever. Share our story with the larger world. Tell them about us. I had seen the immense passion with which a seemingly ordinary person had rebuilt his life and was helping nurture those of others. He had broken through extreme adversity in the hope of a brighter future, but here was another harsh lesson. This cycle would not stop, and he would have to make efforts again and again with each new child, even as he perhaps lost another. In other words, he would have to persist in the face of extraordinary human loss. It was through such experiences that I started articulating my purpose better, the spark that I mentioned before. I wasn't going to make a big difference in the world. Rather, I was going to be part of the difference. Very soon I found myself in another tight spot. When I wrote stories of people like him, it felt inauthentic and ingenuine. In short, I didn't know enough. I didn't know what social change looked like, the kinds that help people thrive. These were values important to me, values like human dignity. I recognized my own limitations, which pulled back my understanding of the world, and so I chose to do what I do best. I decided to study more. I zeroed in on a master's degree that could potentially help me understand poverty, development, and government policies at a time when such courses didn't quite exist in India. And here's where I failed miserably and painfully. To realize my dream, I had to find the resources. For 3 years, I was rejected by admissions, and when I secured admission, then rejected by scholarship committees. My daily routine was working a full-time job in the day and drafting applications in the night. The familiar bogies of whether I was good enough or if this was what I should be doing emerged. After countless cycles of only failures, I gave up. But as they say, the universe falls in love with the stubborn heart. Perhaps that's what happened when I received both an admission offer from a prestigious university and a scholarship. I was selected because I had different experiences and perspectives to add. That was lesson number 3. No matter how much I toiled or how far and distant the dream of studying seemed, this change in my life took years of painstaking effort. While lives can change overnight, I learned, transformations are almost always incremental. And this is also how I scaled another mountainous peak that had once seemed insurmountable. With each passing year, the stakes have only increased. In order to study, I had to leave my job, and after I arrived back in India, I didn't find another for months. Almost 60 job applications, including rounds of interviews, where I had thought I had clinched the deal, my candidature was rejected every single time. And it hurt. Again, chaos and uncertainty were overwhelming. This is also where the seeds for what I call ideas of scale were sown. I always felt and still feel an invisible tug. My passion, my purpose for being. My idea of scale is rooted in what I am good at. For example, I interpret the world and offer these conceptual insights through writing or working full-time in the non-profit sector to deepen public debate, trigger action on some of humanity's most difficult challenges such as poverty or access to healthcare. And here's where I think you should pay attention to. Simply put, you can be an entrepreneur, an author, a salesperson, or a scientist, or anybody else, but you too can have an idea of scale which can flow from anything that moves you and offers impactful solutions to long-standing problems. The key is identifying your values and what you would want to do with these. If there is a lesson from the COVID-19 pandemic, then it is how fragile our lives really are. Think about how all our lives have changed. We are feeling frustrated and we are feeling increasingly lost. But we are all part of something bigger, and thus another way of looking at the pandemic is how it has opened spaces for micro-leadership or acting to make better using what we have in us. If the pandemic has been a storm nobody had predicted, now is the time to act. To start with, the ability to turn adversity into a window of opportunity is a skill. Take for example handwriting and reading. The more you employ it, the better you can become. In 2019, I began hosting India's first podcast on rare individuals. These are people with chronic genetic illnesses. An estimated 70 to 90 million Indians are rare individuals, but not many in the public know about them. In the course of reporting their experiences, I come across phenomenal people who pushed back their circumstances with severely malfunctioning bodies. They have set up patient networks, built hospitals, and sit on government advisory boards to make sure all people are able to live with dignity. They are ordinary, like you and me. They struggled, there's no escaping that. but by proving resilient while going through the grind, they reshaped their lives and contributed values to that of others. The millions of healthcare and other staff working day in and day out on the front line every day to stand as testament to how each of us can contribute in our own ways. So then, the simple question is, why fear flying against the wind? Thank you.